If your payout is not big enough, you will not be willing to suffer to get it. I put on here, if your purpose or your vision isn't truly valuable to you, you will not endure the hardship that will come before your success. You have to ask yourself, is the reward big enough? Is the reward big enough? Because I'm going to ask you right now, what's your vision? What's your purpose? And if your purpose is, well, I would really like to have a nice car, but you're content with walking, or you're content with whatever. And here's how I know your goals aren't big enough. You know how I know your goals aren't big enough? You aren't willing to show up early to work. That's the first test. How do I know your goals aren't big enough? Because you push the snooze button in the morning. Huh? How do I know your goals aren't big enough? Because you won't even suffer the extra 10 minutes of sleep to get up early to prepare to become a better person. Make sense? So, there's different measures of suffering. Sometimes the suffering we have is a lot. Like if you start a business, for instance, there's a lot of suffering that's involved. If you have children, there's a lot of suffering involved, right? So each thing, the more, listen, the bigger the payout, the more the suffering. The bigger the reward, the more the suffering. Because this world doesn't want you to succeed. This life is rigged with a curse. Rigged with a curse. As the scripture says in the beginning, I will greatly increase your pain in childbearing. By the sweat of your brow, you will work the ground, right? There is suffering involved when we try to produce things that bring life into this planet. So if your payout in your mind is not big enough, you're not going to endure the suffering required for success. Am I making sense? Am I making sense? I won't come, I won't come to a meeting. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. Whatever the suffering is, the goal's not big enough. Make sense? I don't want to be inconvenienced. Well, sorry, but when it comes to success, there's inconvenience. When it comes to success, there's a cost. Spent what? I talked about this earlier. I spent $50,000 on learning how to improve. $50,000 on courses, education, coaching, books. I think I spent at least $3,000 on books alone. If the reward is not big enough, if you don't have a vision that's big enough, you're not going to pay the price or suffer in order to accomplish that goal. Right? You have to be willing to suffer. So then the question is, if you're not willing to suffer, you need to question your goals. Because the goals aren't big enough. What we've talked about your goals, right? What the reward, listen, no one's going to go through the suffering unless they believe the payout is worth it. Make sense?
Yeah.
No one's going to endure the pain of success unless they believe that the end goal is worth it. There's two motivators for life. Pain and reward. Pain and reward. People don't change until it's too painful to stay the same. Right?
Yeah.
People don't make a change unless it's too painful to stay the same. People don't go further in life unless they have a payout in their goals so big that it's worth suffering for. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Because here's what happens. The devil doesn't want you to succeed. He knows that we're driven by pain too. That's why you have all that pain. It's just supposed to, you know what I believe pain and suffering are for? Pain and suffering do two things. they keep you from being too stupid, right?
Yeah.
But then they also keep lazy people from succeeding. Say it again. Pain does two things. It keeps you from being too stupid, too foolish, right? Because if you're so foolish, without pain, you wouldn't know when to quit, and then you would die, right?
Yeah.
Right? So pain detours you from doing life-destructive things. But then pain also prevents you from truly succeeding unless you really deserve it. Every time you go through pain and suffering, here's the question that comes to mind. Is it worth it? Say it again. Every time you go through pain and suffering in life, it poses the question, is it worth it? And you'll determine in that moment if it's worth it. So if you're in a new car, right? And you're not willing to get up in the morning when the alarm goes off so you can get to your job on time, so you don't get fired, right? See, the fear of being fired gets you out of bed. Well, if the reward of the car isn't big enough to get you out of bed, your goal is too small. Am I making sense? If the reward of buying a car isn't enough to get you out of bed, it's not a big enough goal. Make sense?
Yeah.
Change your goals. Change your vision. Change your purpose. Make sense? Fit it. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah.
All right. That's all I got. Now be blessed.
All right.